That was beautifully put. He said in a statement.
Yeah, well, the Rugby Football League chairman, Simon Johnson, found more words to explain his disappointment. He called it a selfish, parochial and cowardly decision, telling BBC Radio 4's Today programme, "The Rugby League World Cup organisers have bent over backwards to offer every assurance to the Australians and the Kiwis. We are very unhappy with this decision and we are not prepared to take it lying down. I think the British public would want to know why they have made that decision now about a tournament in October when they have athletes currently in Tokyo participating in the Olympics, when their rugby union team is planning to come to Wales in October, and when the New Zealand cricket team have been here already to participate. So there is something that rugby league authorities believe is insurmountable where other sports have no problem. The Rugby League World Cup organisers have made considerable commitments at great expense, as has the British government, to do what they can to guarantee the safety of the athletes when they are here and when they return and travel between. I'm afraid the rugby league authorities in Australia and New Zealand have just not been prepared to accept those assurances. Of course it's possible to postpone, but by the time rugby league is played next year, we will be competing with the Commonwealth Games and the FIFA World Cup in Qatar. October and November 2021 is perfect because all restrictions have been lifted here in the UK, with fans returning to sporting events. I believe that there will be full attendance."
Yeah, RLPA Chief Executive Clint Newton said the decision from the ARLC and New Zealand Rugby League was disappointing, saying we've had feedback from a number of players eligible for those nations stating their intentions to compete in the tournament, pending more information becoming available in the coming weeks. Clearly, the views of those players have not been enough to prevent this decision, and we believe it's been made prematurely. The RLPA represents players in Australia's National Rugby League, which also contains players from Tonga, Fiji and Samoa, who are still set to compete in the World Cup. Newton says he will continue to work with tournament organisers to ensure the health and safety of players whose countries remain committed to the tournament.
So, some strong words all across the board there. Let's see if there's been some strong words from our listeners as well. I'll start with Alan Walker, who says, "The outrage at the NRL for pulling out is not justified. It was no surprise. It was obvious months ago. The NRL should not be criticised. It's a justifiable call. Just keep the World Cup schedule as it is. Invite Trell and the Indigenous boys, Maoris and Islanders to come over, play the tournament, salute the champions, but don't slag off the NRL. The sanctimonious bullshit from the World Cup, RFL and UKRL media is total wank." I mean, Alan really fucking hates everything to do with the country he was born in, so it's no surprise that he's done that. But that is, a strong opposite view to what I suspect the rest of the views are going to be.
Yes, indeed.
But yeah, good to hear from you, Alan, because it's good to get a different perspective.
Yeah, it is indeed. Although I think it's total wank. But there you go. EFC 78JU says, "It's always brilliant having new champions, but disappointing for losing two teams in defending champions Australia and New Zealand. They were right to call the decision on risking their team players on getting COVID-19. Hopefully Wales do the impossible, or England can bring a trophy home. It can be anyone's name on that trophy next."
Always in Our Shadow said, "First thought, tell them to fuck it and pay without the USA, and another to step up. Fans will still support the tournament, not sure about sponsors."
Tom Andrews says, "If there was ever a case of bringing the game into disrepute, this is it. Not sure what leg they have to stand on when the players want to play and the teams from Oz and New Zealand of other sports are dotted across the world. I'd say play on without them, but it would be a massive asterisk next to whoever won it."
Barney at Baton Hall Blue said, "Initial reaction is that this is terrible for the sport as a whole. No appetite from the undeniable superpower to grow the game outside the NRL. Our sport is going to be colloquial aside, like Aussie rules, as cricket, basketball, soccer, American football, and sadly rugby union push on and grow globally. If there was a will, we could have navigated around COVID." And Carsten got in touch as well. He said, this was late, this was after I'd sent the rundown, David, he said, "I'm getting more and more fed up by the administrators of the game all over the world. Too angry to make any more comments." So, first of all, do we buy that the real fear is the safety and well-being of people coming to this country because of the COVID situation in this country, or do we feel that that is an excuse so that the NRL gets it the way that they want it?
My view is this is about the NRL and the competition, nothing to do with, in my humble opinion, nothing to do with concerns about player safety and welfare. Much more to do with making sure that the NRL competition is being protected from having players back in Australia in time for a pre-season. I've never, notwithstanding what I've never thought that the NRL had the international games interests at heart. I think they're totally focused on the success of the NRL and the State of Origin series, and have got very little regard or care for the wider game globally. And I think this decision shows that. I think it's very regrettable that we've got to a position where communications have broken down in such a way that, this came as there was a shock announcement. Clearly, lots of stuff's been going on behind the scenes, with us, with an announcement being made that it was definitely going ahead, only for this to happen later. I think there is a lot of water still to flow under the bridge here. But, in answer to your question, Mark, no, I don't buy that this is about player welfare. I think it's about the NRL protecting their own competition at the expense of the international game.
And probably at the expense of their ability to actually make more money in the longer term by having a stronger appeal a wider appeal for the sport. Yeah. Where will the eyes ultimately focus on their competition, because it is the premier competition. So when this announcement was made that we were gonna be going ahead, I think there was an element of political pressure to it. We had the Challenge Cup final coming up, which was a major chance to get profile and media, and we didn't want it all to be about people about the World Cup not happening. They wanted to push that the World Cup's happening, tickets are back on sale, go out and buy them. And of course the government as well, who put a lot of money relatively to what they normally put into rugby league into this competition, will similarly have, I believe, been wanting to have that positive announcement be made at a time where they were under pressure about other stuff, to do with the way things were going, and maybe fears about opening up too soon. Certainly it's not a good look that so many Super League games are getting called off at the moment because of COVID. Yep. But what I think is very important to talk about is that the Rugby League World Cup wouldn't be operated in the same way that the Super League is operated under in terms of sort of the biosecurity measures and bubbles and what have you might want to call it, because basically the World Cup's got more money than Super League's got. Yeah. And it's being run differently. And they've made all those assurances. They've shown how it's all would work. And I think the other similar thing to say is about the fear of the well-being and stuff. I mean, if they had a vaccination program in Australia and New Zealand that was a match of ours, then it wouldn't be as big a risk, would it? So there's two problems here. There's the problem that we can't control our case numbers, matched with the problem that they don't have a vaccination rollout. So they don't have the protection for people who do get it to not become seriously ill. So those two things could collide probably in the worst possible sense. And when it's so many people coming in, I suppose you can talk about those worries. More that there's so many people going back, I think is obviously Australia and New Zealand's worry. If I was a player, I'd want to come. I'd get off that plane, get my first jab, play the tournament, get my second jab, go home, and be safer than other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe that's part of the answer. Is get some of these guys jabbed up now. We've got plenty of vaccines here if they want some.
Well, that's an option, isn't it? That the government could reach out and offer potentially.
Yeah.
You know, there are other solutions. For me, it can't happen without these two countries. I just think it cheapens it too much. Yes, most fans like us will go and support it anyway. We'll enjoy the fact that we might get a different outcome, but ultimately it won't be a World Cup. It won't feel like a World Cup. If England win or Tonga win or whatever, there'll be a hollowness to that, despite the fact that it'll be celebrated and enjoyed.
I agree, Mark. I mean, I've been waiting pretty much my whole life. I don't remember, even though I've obviously seen it on the TV, I don't remember when we last won the World Cup. And I've been waiting all my life to watch us win the World Cup. I actually happen to think we probably wouldn't win this one. I think the Australian game has moved on again over the last few years, particularly with the speeding up of the game down there. I don't think we've quite caught up with that. But if we won the World Cup in these circumstances, it would leave a really sour taste in my mouth. I would be very up for us playing a tournament, up for having a festival of rugby league. We can call it whatever we want, but I don't. It wouldn't sit well with me that we lifted that trophy in these circumstances, and I don't think any serious rugby league fan would honestly believe that we were the best team in the world if we won the trophy in these circumstances.
What I would like to see is the NRL, through the puppet strings that they're pulling on the ARLC and the NZRL, I'd like to see what their kind of compromise solution is, because just postponing it till a year later doesn't take into account other significant factors. The most significant factor being that the last week or so of our tournament, the week where the biggest games, the semi-finals and the final will be played, will clash with the Football World Cup. And whilst they might think that's not a big deal because soccer isn't, is like the third or fourth biggest team sport in their country, or fifth even maybe, it's not in the rest of the fucking world, and they need to get out of their own little headspace and realise that it's way too big to take on. And actually, if they thought about it too, that first week of the Football World Cup, that's when all the games are on. That's when there's 3 games a day every day. So the media coverage is completely consumed by that competition on the television. And even in the build-up, obviously most of the coverage would be taken up by it, but you could probably counter some of that with an earlier tournament. But, you can't have our showpiece event going up against potentially an England match or even another big football fixture between two big nations, because it'll really minimise the impact our World Cup can have. So I want to hear them making it clear that it isn't about the fact that they don't want players 2 weeks back late for pre-season training for their precious fucking season, and come up with a solution where, 1, they financially reimburse anyone who's missing out because of this, because of them, and 2, they move their season next year earlier, so that, and Super League alongside it can have maybe a couple of rounds less or something too. I think there's an opportunity for scarcity to be what might drive more demand anyway in Super League, because I think there's an element of monotony now that is keeping the crowds down week by week. But anyway, that's another matter. Make both seasons end 2 weeks earlier, so that the World Cup can be 2 weeks earlier, or maybe even 3 weeks earlier. But I want to see them come out and say that, but they're not, because they don't want to compromise their own seasons, because it's all about their season.
Exactly, Mark. Exactly.
They've used a legitimate reason to be concerned because of the rising case numbers and the fact that none of them are vaccinated, and they don't want it to get into their country. Even though the players were going to be put up at not the Aussie government's expense, but at the tournament organisers'